This is Awareness Explorers.
Welcome back, fellow explorers, to Awareness Explorers, where we try to give you valuable, helpful information on how to up-level your consciousness and know your true nature. I'm your host, Jonathan Robinson, and with my friend and co-host,
Brian Tom O'Connor.
Is that what we do? Is that a good 5-second description, Brian?
It sounds good, although I'm not completely sure what you have planned for this, but it's a good overall description for us.
Okay. Well, today, we were talking about how, most people who listen to this podcast probably meditate. And that one thing that isn't talked about is how to prepare for meditation. And I find that that's actually a very interesting topic and one that has a lot of nuance to it and a lot of different ways of preparing for meditation. But I remember a while back, I caught myself driving my car really quickly because I only had a certain amount of time to meditate. And I thought to myself, I got to hurry home so I can meditate. And then I realized how ridiculous that thought was, because hurrying and meditation are two very opposite things. So that was not a good way to prepare for meditation. But the reason I think this is important is because, to a large extent, your experience in meditation, in my opinion, is the result of what you've done right before. If you've been hurrying, you will probably have a hurried, not very depthful meditation. If you've been preparing for a long time, doing various things that we'll talk about, you'll probably have a wonderful experience. But I'm wondering, Brian, do you have any particular ritual you do to prepare for meditation?
No.
That was easy.
That's the short answer, although I try and see if I'm sleepy. And if I'm sleepy, I might wait for another time. My feeling about meditation is that it is not doing anything. It's not attempting to change anything about my experience whatsoever. So I might be, my feelings about it might be a little contradictory to today's topic.
That's interesting. And why I must admit, I confess, I'm confessing to a crime, that I like to have good experiences in meditation. And I find that depending upon when I meditate and what I do in the hour before makes a huge difference in what the experience is. For example, like if I meditate at night or in the late afternoon, I generally just space out and fall asleep, which is fine, but I can space out and fall asleep other times.
Yep, me too.
In fact, I'm rather good at that. But if I want to have a very deep experience, which I prefer, there are various things that I do, including the timing. And if I meditate at certain times of the day, it generally goes extremely well. And if I meditate other times, I generally, space out and fall asleep. Do you find that true as well?
Oh, yes. Really, the time, like meditating after lunch is completely out.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you why.
Because I'm more likely to fall asleep.
Yeah, so you also want a good experience. I knew I'd play an attorney here, put you on the witness stand.
Well, the thing is, if I do sit down to meditate and I do fall asleep, then it's just what happens. I'll probably try again later. But yeah, I suppose that might seem to contradict my view on it, but actually I don't think it does, because I think that doing nothing isn't easy. It actually takes practice. And to sit and allow everything to be as it is not something that can easily be done while you're asleep, because while you're asleep, you automatically allow everything to be as it is. And so who knows, maybe sleeping is just the best thing.
Well, I think that, and this is a philosophical difference, I think that we should aim for really powerful, deep meditations if possible, that it's a sacred thing. So how we prepare for it, just like, if you're taking psychedelics, you want to be prepared. You don't want to do it during a bad day when you're rushing around. even the same thing with, spending time with a friend, that, sometimes you're really there, present, and sometimes you're not. So I don't put meditation in a different category other than maybe the technique, which is to let everything be as it is, or that's one type of meditation. So you mentioned that you might not do it after lunch because having a big meal and then meditating is not generally a good way to prepare for meditation.
I would say it's not generally a good way to prepare for meditation.
Yeah.
I'll grant you that, but I will say that experience comes and goes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, other things that are probably not good to do before meditation is be incredibly busy or stressed. Now, if you never meditate under those conditions, that can be an interesting experience. I think you should try everything, a few times, see what it's like. But if I'm hurried or stressed, that's at least not likely to be a very deep meditation.
Yeah, I
But there
think
are,
that's the perfect time to meditate.
okay.
I'm going to be I'm going to be the devil's advocate though. I think this whole episode. Go ahead.
Well, I like it when we have different opinions, because our listeners can listen to the right opinion being mine and the wrong opinion being yours, and see which ones they like.
Okay.
But but no, as often happens, Brian, we're so locked in our own opinions most of the time that when I hear your view, which contrasts with mine, I go, that's interesting. I haven't thought of it that way. And hopefully, when I present my ironclad case, that you'll go, well, that's at least thought provoking.
That's happened many times, I will
Yeah,
admit.
yeah, and that's one of the things I like about our discussions. We tend to move towards the middle often. So the way I look at it is that if I want to have a very deep meditation, which is my preference, that I have tried, I'll go into 20 some odd things that I've tried to do before meditation to see what impact it has. And some of them are very simple, like take 3 minutes, and some of them take much longer time. But even when you've done your guided meditations, Brian, you do often start with a little bit of preparation, like close your eyes and take some deep breaths and settle in.
Yes, you're right about that, because I do think that just simple physical relaxation is sort of like opens up a little bit of a door.
I agree. So one way to do that might be through anywhere from a 10-second body scan to a 10-minute body scan, where you're relaxing parts of your body and trying to let go of obvious tension in your body. And I do think that that helps with the deepening of meditation. Another thing that I often do is I play a favorite song. In fact, for years, I have my friend John Aston, who was on this podcast. He's written like 10 CDs, all beautiful music. I would play one of his songs that would kind of put me in my heart and calm me down and put me in what I would call a good state of mind to meditate.
Yeah, I just listened just the other day to Within You and Without You, which was a George Harrison composed
Yeah,
song by the Beatles. And I thought, I'm going to have to meditate to this song, but I haven't
yeah,
yet.
yeah, yeah. Music can really affect our state. And one of the great things about music is you're not trying to listen to music to get it over with. It's like meditation in a certain way.
Good point.
You don't play a song and go, well, 3 more minutes, I gotta sit here. So music in of itself can be a meditation, but it's also, when you have playlists that you really like that settle you in, can be a great way to prepare for meditation. In different traditions, body position makes a big difference. Now, I'm not keen on this. In
In-
some traditions like Zen, you sit up, you have your hands in a very specific way, you have your face, your jaw, everything is like very precise. And if that works for you, great. If it doesn't, then don't do it. But I do find that there is a chair that I like that kind of helps me sit up a little bit straighter, and that helps with meditation. Do you have a chair like that?
You're right. I do have a chair like that that helps me not be concerned about my body. In other words,
Hmm.
I'm not uncomfortable, but I'm also not using any effort to keep it in any position because I actually can't for the life of me see the value of all this emphasis on posture in meditation.
Yeah, I think part of it was, that your spine be somewhat straight. I'm not big on that either, but it is nice to be comfortable and to be able to forget about your body. Um, Another aspect is potentially doing some kind of cathartic type of movement like dance or exercise. I find that the endorphins I get from exercise can help me to have a very good meditation experience. I know you go to the gym a lot. Do you ever go to the gym and then meditate?
No, I usually don't. That's interesting. Maybe I'll try that and see.
Ah, I'm bringing you to my side. We're a little more with each of these. By the end, you'll be singing the praises, I hope.
But I do believe in the effect of movement and exercise that it has a positive effect, and that's been scientifically proven.
Yeah, it gets the energy moving. I don't like falling asleep in meditation. I'm already good at sleeping, so I want to keep those two things separate as possible. And doing some exercise beforehand or doing some dance or even stretching. I think hatha yoga, which is now its whole big thing, I think originally it was more to get people prepared for meditation, so that they could sit comfortably for a long period of time. And I do find that when I do yoga, it actually is helpful for deepening into meditation. So that's another thing that people do of movement to the body in different ways. You know, I'm going to go into a bunch of more suggestions, but what I want our listeners to do is think of what would work for them.
Mhm.
Because ultimately, I think having rituals that you do right before this sacred experience of meditation just becomes part of your meditation. Some people, like in the Muslim tradition, they wash hands before they go into the temple. Into not not called the temple. What's it called?
Mosque?
Mosque. Yes, there we go. It shows you how much I know about Islam. But having some simple ritual you do, like listening to a song or stretching or yoga, that you don't have to think about, it just becomes part of the meditation. And of course, different things are going to work for different people. I find that there's certain mini meditations I might do. I'll call them mini meditations, like focusing on what I'm grateful for a couple minutes. Have you ever done that?
I have in the past, not recently.
Uh-huh. Once again, it helps you become present. You have to think, okay, what am I grateful for in my life?
Hmm.
It tends to open up the heart. It's like an on-ramp to the freeway of meditation.
Yeah, it's not that I have not ever felt gratitude. I've often, but it's usually spontaneous for me. Like,
Uh-huh.
wow, I am so grateful for this. Just in the moment. I don't usually sit down for a gratitude session, but I'm certainly open to gratitude any and all times.
Hmm. In the 90s, when I did this book called The Experience of God, I interviewed 40 spiritual leaders. I was surprised at how many, one of the questions I asked them is, how do you connect with God? And I was very surprised at how many of them said that focusing on gratitude as their meditation was their favorite way. And it really struck me, like, back then people weren't talking about gratitude, but these, well-known spiritual leaders were doing that a lot. And now it's much more known that people do that. And there's different ways doing it spontaneously, doing a gratitude journal. I've mentioned in previous episodes the thank you mantra. But for me, doing like a 3-minute gratitude meditation and really trying to feel whatever shows up in my mind as an object of gratitude has been a nice way to start meditation. Another thing that can help is coffee or other nootropics. Nootropics are supplements you can take that tend to help you with focus and concentration and wake up the brain. Caffeine being the most notable one. Do you ever do coffee and then meditate?
Not, I don't put them together. I've never had coffee as a preparation for meditation, at least consciously.
Uh-huh. Well, for people who are new to caffeine, it's quite a treat. When nowadays I'm kind of used to coffee. I drink 1 cup a day. But when I started a coffee habit, it was like, wow, this is so much fun to meditate, because the coffee high plus the meditation high, and the two went really well together, like peanut butter and chocolate. So that can be fun. But there's a lot of nootropics now that you can buy online, spelled Nootropics, and they can really wake up your brain. And if you have a hard time focusing in meditation, or you tend to fall asleep, that's something that you might actually give a shot to. Some of you know that I'm into gadgets, and I have a photobiomodulation helmet, which puts infrared light into the brain. And we've talked about that. That can be a good preparation for meditation, or you can do that while meditating, and that can kind of give it a little bit more oomph. I'm sure you haven't tried the photobiomodulation helmet yet.
No.
Uh-huh. My friend Sanjay brought one to a conference, and he gave everybody a test ride, like a 20-minute thing. And he sold a lot of helmets. This was a finders community. And I think practically everybody who tried the helmet said, yeah, I want one of these. So they can be pretty powerful. One that I like to do for preparation meditation, I call it my pet meditation, is I take one of my 2 dogs and I look them in the eye, look her in the eye, and pet her slowly. And we do this kind of love back and forth eye gazing while I pet her behind the ears. And it's kind of like a little love fest. Dogs, some dogs are very good at taking in love and also giving love. And it's a nice preparation for meditation. You don't have any pets right now, but you can probably relate to that a little bit.
Oh, I certainly can relate to it because I love dogs, particularly other people's dogs, and have experienced just what you described.
Yeah, it's nice. Another thing is fasting. Now, I tend to fast every day for about 20 minutes. That's not that much of an exaggeration. Anyways, the few times that I do fast, maybe once a year, and then meditate, I find that, wow, that's really something. Have you ever tried that?
I've never fasted in relation to meditation. I fasted for health reasons. I practice intermittent fasting, which is fasting between 8 p.m. and noon. But I don't do it for spiritual reasons.
When you have fasted, did you then meditate that day just because you meditate every day and found that was different?
No.
Huh. I find it's quite different. It somehow takes down whatever defenses I have, and the vulnerability of not having food, and also sometimes the increased energy really affects meditation. In fact, I think that's one of the reasons why in the Bible and other holy books, fasting is suggested, is that it really impacts one's state of consciousness, especially if one's meditating. A bath or a sauna can be a good way to prepare for meditation. Especially, when I take like a steam sauna, I find that it invigorates me, and anything that invigorates me kind of makes me sharper in meditation. So that's been fun. Well, that gets into the next method. I'm not a morning person. It's hard for me to wake up in the morning. So, I take a shower, which is warm, and then I end it by putting it slightly cooler and sometimes approaching a little bit cold, which is about all I can handle. But that invigorates you. And then if I go from the somewhat cold shower to meditation, I'm very awake and the meditation goes better. So now some people are very brave. They take, ice cold showers and things like that, which has health benefits. And probably, I've never asked these people, but probably gives them somewhat of a high for a while. One that I think everybody can relate to is spending time in nature and then meditating. You live in New York City, so that might be a little bit challenging.
No, but there is nature nearby
Yeah.
that I can enjoy, and I have meditated in nature. The most impactful one was in Sedona, on a hill surrounded by trees. There,
Mm-hmm.
that was an amazing meditation.
Yeah, I was in Sedona last month, and they have these vortexes where if you meditate there, it's usually a pretty amazing experience as well.
Yeah,
But nature,
this was on the airport vortex.
yeah, that's my favorite vortex there. Nature has a calming influence, and studies show that even looking at greenery helps calm the mind. Whenever I live somewhat rurally, and I live near a forest. But whenever I go into cities, I just really feel the difference. Like, wow, how do people meditate here? Because it's so chaotic. So nature can be like, once again, a calming influence. I think of it kind of like, in meditation, you're trying to get to a place of stillness or close to it. And if your mind is going 100 miles an hour, or if your environment is going 100 miles an hour, that's going to affect your mind. And then if you spend time in nature or do any of these other things we're talking about, that's like putting on the brakes. Going straight from being busy in a city to meditation, it's like trying to stop a car in 10 feet that's going 100 miles an hour. It just doesn't work that way. So this is more like putting on the brakes slowly, slowly, slowly. And if you're going 10 miles an hour, it's easier to stop than going 100 miles an hour. What do you think of my theory?
I suppose it's a good theory. I mean, a little later, I'm going to tell you why the entire premise of this episode differs from my point of view, but we'll have to wait for that. But I live in a city. I love cities. I think I love plants and animals as well. So I love to have trees and flowers around. But I walk around the city. I do a meditation where I just walk around and look at all the people and imagine what is looking out through their eyes and seeing if it feels the same as what's looking out through my eyes and seeing if I can feel the connection and the unity.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. You've talked about that before, and that's one of the few methods that you've talked about that I can't relate to. So we're like, punching it out here, Brian.
Yep.
But I appreciate that I'm getting a different view, and I have a couple more things to go into for premeditation. But then I look forward to you undercutting the entire argument in a moment. A couple weeks ago, we interviewed a woman named Kate about trauma release exercises. And I think that any type of somatic releasing, whether it be TRE or for me, another form of release that I do before meditation often is just 3 or 4 yawns. And I find that helps me to settle in. So, every person has to find what works for them. Of course, all the awareness games that you've created in your books, Brian, they can be used as a pre-meditation. Like while I'm just sitting down to meditate, I might use the just born idea, where you imagine you were just born, or wordlessness, where I see my environment and try to experience it without words. Another one is your method include, which is kind of getting out of the story that I have locked in my head and more being aware of other things in my environment. And those are all too bad you're not using them because, but I'm happy to steal from you, Brian. And I find that those are great little free meditation rituals.
What do you mean, too bad I'm not using them?
Well, I think I'm going to take on your point of view a little bit. How everything I'm saying is perhaps the wrong way of looking at meditation, and I'm going to challenge you doing some of these things to see if that makes a big difference in your meditation.
Oh, I see what you
And
mean. Yeah, I consider those to be mini meditations on their own as opposed to a preparation for a meditation. And
yeah,
all of them pretty much have the same aim, which is to turn attention inward instead of the content or the story or the idea that something needs to be different or changed.
mm-hmm. Well, the reason I think of them as pre-meditations is that it would be unusual for me to do like the wordless thing as a hour-long meditation, or to do the just born thing as a hour-long meditation. I tend to do them for short periods of time as a way to well, just because I like them, and it helps me to feel more peaceful.
Well, I have no objection to that. And as you said, what works for each person is different. And I could see using wordlessness for an hour, but also really loved. I mean, I learned this from Locke Kelly, the first person that I heard this from. He said, "Small moments many times a day,"
Uh-huh.
and I find that as valuable as longer meditation.
I agree. And in our conversations, one of the things I like about them is that we come from different angles sometimes. And it never occurred to me to use wordlessness for an hour. But why not? Or do just born for an hour. Why not? So what I'm learning is that we get locked into our own habits, and they're not there for any good reason. I mean, it's not like I thought about why I should only use wordless for 2 minutes, but we get locked in these habits. And unless you're talking about this stuff or listening to us talk about from different angles, you sometimes get locked into habits that really are no longer serving you.
Yeah.
So I'm curious as to you undercutting the whole concept of getting prepared for meditation.
Oh, have we gone through your all 20 of your
Pretty
preparations?
much. I mean, there's like, breathing techniques that can be one as well.
Hmm.
In fact, you often start your meditations with like, oh, settle down, take some deep breaths. That's a pre-meditation.
Yeah, I see what you mean. You're right. It is. It is a little tiny prep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
from your point of view, why prep at all? Just hurry home and then say, okay, now I'm meditating. That might be something to do. What do you see as the advantage of
Well,
not
I,
not
I,
be meditation?
I say that in a guided meditation as a transition period,
Mm-hmm.
because most people have been sitting there listening to the content of our discussion and probably weighing it in their mind, the pros and cons, and having judgments about it, and just taking a breath is a transition period because breathing can only happen now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is not a preparation to change the coming experience. I use it just as a transition period into listening to the guided meditation.
Yeah, well, the question I have is, why do people need a transition period? I call a transition period a pre-meditation,
Sure.
and
Well,
and that can,
we're talking about semantics now,
yeah.
but I think that the crux of my point of view is I think I can sum it up in a sign that I heard that Adyashanti had at retreats, which was no manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
And I know from direct experience that when I have a feeling I don't want and I sit down to meditate and get rid of it, it's nothing, it doesn't work. Or
Mhm.
if I had this wonderful experience in the past with meditation and I sit down and I want to get that back, it doesn't work. But when I sit there without any idea of changing my experience whatsoever, with this maybe with a slight exception that you pointed out of taking a deep breath, maybe that's an inconsistency. Maybe I'll drop that in the future, but that's a sidetrack. It is the idea that what noticing what is happening now without a strategy to change it. And this to me is half of meditation. The second half is about attention, turning your attention inward to that which knows all of your experience, so that if your experience, if you're doing the prep for meditation in order to have a different experience in meditation, then you are not allowing whatever experience there is to be, and you're chasing experiences come and go, and the idea for me is to see what doesn't come and go, what's always there no matter what the experience.
Mhm. Yeah, I can see the value of that. I think the pre-meditation can be done in one or two different trajectories. One would be to try to have a definite better experience in meditation, but the other could be so that you could better do what you just said, which is to, uh, we're normally very much manipulating our experience, manipulating things in the world, and getting things done. So to be able to just allow everything to be as it is requires a somewhat of a shift of how we are being in our being. So I would call the pre-meditations helping with that shift so I can really do what you just said. Otherwise, I will bring my manipulative state of consciousness into meditation, which happens if I don't do some kind of short ritual to kind of make that shift. What do you think of that?
Well, I think you make a very good case, and the way you described it, it sounds very similar to taking a deep breath before meditation as a transition,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to a way to change your meditation experience from something you don't like so much into something you like better.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think that the way you just described it, I wouldn't argue with it. It sounds terrific to me. But I also agree that there's nothing wrong with any of what you described. It's
Mm-hmm.
all, and if someone hears what you described and tries it out, and it does help with that sense of quiet, allowing, and noticing and inward focus, then yeah, then I'm all for it. Then go for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I knew we'd come more to the middle between us, but another thing I thought of was that depending on where you are in your meditation journey, when I started meditating, I really needed it to be about trying to have a better experience in life. I was, a
Right.
depressed teenager. Now that I've been meditating for 50 years, I'm more like, well, let's just see what shows up kind of thing, more of that attitude. So I
Yeah.
think different people need different strategies of meditation and perhaps different strategies of pre-meditation, depending upon what they want and where they are in their journey.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And there's actually many reasons to meditate. I mean,
Right.
just simply, what if the reason you meditate is to lower your blood pressure?
Yeah.
Then I would say do it and use your prep techniques because it will help.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just that my view of meditation is not that. My view of meditation is to turn your attention to true nature, to
Mm-hmm.
the peace that's already here amid the chaos that you experience in the world and your mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, interesting discussion, and we like to present things so that there's no right and wrong. You get to choose what feels like the most beneficial thing to you at this time in your journey.
Yes.
And along those lines, we appreciate our Patreon supporters. We give a lot of free stuff to them. And you can, I think, sign Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You go into patreon.com/awareness explorers. And we often include extra discussions with some of the people we interviewed, which usually happen after we interviewed them. And we have a more informal discussion, which I really like. Those are fun.
Those are fun, and I enjoy sharing those with our supporters.
Uh-huh. So I'm going to do a pre-meditation meditation.
Cool.
If that makes sense. And think of this, it'll be, maybe a little bit shorter, 3 to 5 minutes. But this is kind of what I might do before I meditate to kind of get to a place where I feel like I've transitioned from my busy day and now I'm settling in and now I can just be with whatever is. So if that sounds good, put things aside and make yourself comfortable. And begin by taking a couple of slow, deep breaths. And if you can, close your eyes. Now, I want you to notice any part of your body that you can easily notice is tense or contracted or holding more than it needs to. Just notice it. And if you can, breathe into that area so that on the exhale, it can relax more. And notice what it feels like to have it be a little bit more relaxed. Next, I want you to find another spot in your body that there's tension or stress, a tight muscle or contraction. Notice it. Imagine breathing into it, and then on the exhale, letting it unwind. And one more time, breathing into any part of your body that you'd like to be more relaxed. And on the exhale, just letting everything go with a sigh. Now become aware of any story you might have going on in your head from the day, from whatever just happened before. And imagine that you can take that story from your head and put it in a sealed container on a shelf just while you meditate. That you rise it out of your head into this container, you lock the container, and you can just completely let that story go. You can revisit it after meditation if you want. But right now, it is locked away, giving you full permission to simply be here with what is. And if it feels right, just do that for as long as you want, or continue with whatever form of meditation feels right and best for you. But for now, I'm going to bring you back to connection with your surroundings. Feel your body on your chair or couch. And take a couple of deep breaths. And when you're ready, slowly open your eyes. How was that, Brian?
I enjoyed it. And
Good.
as I said before, even though I might argue with the premise of changing your experience in meditation, I don't see anything wrong with any of the things that you described, including that one, which actually was, I thought it was lovely, and I felt myself relax and drop into beingness during it.
Good. And, transitions to meditation can be as little as one deep breath, or they can be an hour long, or, whatever. So
Yeah.
you
And I
want to
think
find
that's interesting that we found the middle ground by using the word transitions
Uh-huh.
and seeing that if you look at it that way, we're talking about very similar things.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be an art form to find what works for you.
Yeah.
Well, another good discussion. Thank you. We thank our listeners and our Patreon supporters. And if you like these discussions, feel free to pass them on to friends and family who might benefit from it. Until next time, keep exploring.
Keep exploring.
Thank you for listening to Awareness Explorers. To learn more, you can check out our website at awarenessexplorers.com. Please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. We'd love it if you would post a review. And please share our link with family and friends, because knowing yourself as awareness is the greatest gift you can give yourself or someone you love.